All right, welcome to Josh Anderson Art. Today is November 1st, so yesterday was the end of Inktober. I was taking a little break from my cartoon drawings to do the Inktober prompts every day. Successfully finished my third Inktober yesterday, so that was fun. It's a good break from the cartoons. Now we're back at it. Obviously, today we're doing Fred Flintstone. This series is cartoons from my childhood. They're nostalgic for me. To catch you up if you've never watched one of these before, I have a big list. I compiled them all, the cartoons me and my brother used to watch as kids. It's a little shocking how much TV we used to watch, but I don't know, we did get outside a lot too. But anyway, so I go down this list and I pick out the show. I'm going to try to find it on YouTube and get a good screenshot of either my favorite character or one of the most known characters. I'm not sure if I had a favorite Flintstone necessarily. I think maybe Dino, but I was just now trying to find a good screenshot of Dino, and I just could not find anything high enough resolution where he's in a good position or whatever, so just decided to go ahead and do Fred. He is the most iconic of the show, obviously. He's also pretty iconic for Hanna-Barbera, I think. Definitely one of their flagship shows, started in 1960. I believe I just read on Wikipedia the show went on for about 6 years, so 60 to 66. Definitely predates my time. I was an 80s kid, but this was a show that was always on TV growing up. So it's just as nostalgic to me as any or most all of the 80s cartoons. I think even more the Cartoon Network used Fred Flintstone's face to be kind of the symbol of Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Of course, if you know anything about the Flintstones, they were based off of the Honeymooners characters. So we have the loudmouth main character, which is Fred. To the moon, Alice, to the moon. So if this show predated me, that show definitely predates me. And it's also interesting to note, so Honeymooners to Flintstones and The Simpsons came along and were basically the 90s version of the Flintstones. when I was in high school, I was not allowed to watch The Simpsons because they were a little crass. So then when I started college and it was free to do whatever I wanted, I started watching The Simpsons like every night. 2 episodes back to back every night. I love that show. Did that for years, and I do think that The Simpsons kind of ran out of a lot of their originality and it started to get a little stale. They probably should have quit a long time ago. Quit while they were ahead. Flintstones were only 6 seasons. The Simpsons are now in their 30s. A long time ago, The Simpsons were called the longest running TV series ever, and that was 10 years ago. No, they're still going 10 years later. Of course, then the ripoff of The Simpsons is Family Guy. Probably stepping on a lot of toes there, but I always thought Family Guy was just a complete ripoff of The Simpsons. And again, if you haven't followed my series, it's really just a lunchtime sketch that I'm doing. I just sketch it out real quick in pencil, ink it up real quick, and then I should do a quick scan just to get that inked version, and then I'll come back and color it color pencil. It really shouldn't be more than a 30-minute sketch. A lot of times they end up being more. If it's something like when I did Optimus Prime for Transformers, he's obviously a lot more complicated of a character than something like a Fred Flintstone. I always like to hear what are some of your favorite cartoons and which ones are nostalgic for you. Um, it depends on your generation, really. I guess like I grew up in the '80s and '90s, and so all my nostalgia comes from those cartoons. I know I kind of sound like an old curmudgeon, but like I feel like a lot of the cartoons these days are just weird, and I really miss the kind of innocence and the style of these old cartoons. But I'm sure every generation probably says the same thing. Older generations probably thought the '80s shows were weird. I like to let the ink dry just a little bit because even though I'm using a kneaded eraser, it picks up so much ink that it ends up actually laying down some ink. Kind of messes up the drawing. And it's really probably this pen. I'm using a Papermate Flare, which is actually more kind of a felt tippy type pen. I've explained in other videos how that was a surprising find because it's a cheap pen, but I'm able to get lots of line widths with it, and it doesn't go dead too fast. Some of my more expensive pens are harder to control actually, and harder to get thicknesses. All right, so what I usually do right about here is I go scan this real quick, and I'm just going to leave the video going. So sorry about that. Just so you can stare at this and listen to some theme song, and I will be right back. Back. This should be a simple coloring. Should take too long. We'll be finished in just a little bit here. It's kind of funny when you talk about coloring things, like when I was a kid, anytime you colored with colored pencils or crayons, I grew up in a small town in Colorado, western Colorado, northwestern Colorado, and there's really just not a lot of diversity in our town. And I think there was only one black guy in the whole town. And really, like, I don't think it's racism, but I think you just, especially as a kid, you just do what you know. And So we always called this skin color. And looking back on it, that's kind of, again, I don't think it's racist because I think racism is like a purposeful choice. I think it's, it's just who you are and where you grew up and stuff. And to us, this was skin color. But now I've come to realize that there's lots of different skin colors. So this is Caucasian color. I live in a little bit bigger town now, and there is some little more diversity, but we're still pretty much mostly white, probably white Hispanic community. I think it would be cool if we were more diverse, but I don't know why we're not. Like, I don't, what drives that? Like, why don't more? Actually, black people probably, and maybe Asians. Why don't more move to this city? Who knows? They're usually typically more drawn for some reason to bigger cities. I think minorities are usually drawn to big cities because there's probably more opportunity. The series I'm kind of focusing on coloring with color pencil is just what I made. I made the decision when I started the series, kind of sticking with it, kind of sort of honing my skills. Like, there isn't a lot you can do with cartoons. It's always usually flat color. So it isn't like you can really grow a lot with your color pencil skills. But some cartoons, they do a good job of putting a little bit of shading on the characters, and that kind of helps me learn how to use the darker shades of each color to put shading where the shading falls. Red Flintstone kind of cartoon's not really gonna have a lot of depth in that way. And Fred has this famous 5 o'clock shadow. I have a little bit of a darker color here for that. It's probably what inspired Homer Simpson's 5 o'clock shadow. And then he has this blue tie, which is kind of reminds me of Yogi Bear's green tie. Which I found out the reason they put a tie on Yogi Bear was for animation purposes. If they could leave the body still and not move, and they only had to animate the head, they saved like thousands of frames of animation and all that work and coloring and everything. But to make its head turn, they had to have like a pivot point. So they put a tie on him so that they could leave the body still and have his head turn. Little animation track for you there. So which orange? That's pretty good. I just have to write off. Cheap color pencils. Sorry about that. I kind of like the color orange. Just so rich. All shades of orange. My wife hates it. It's funny. She always says she hates orange. I'm like, how can you hate a color just in general? Like, I can understand maybe you don't like orange shirts or orange this or that, but just in general, hating color. There's so many different ways and shades and ways to use it with other colors and stuff. To me, orange brings out thoughts of like fall and pumpkins and stuff, but it's also my favorite sports team, the Denver Broncos, are orange. I love it. for some reason, it kind of makes me hungry too. Like I feel like when restaurants use the color orange, it just, I don't know, maybe it makes me think of like spicy stuff like Chipotle sauce. Maybe I'm just hungry because it's lunch right now. All right, so I'm going to call this pretty much it. Just a quick drawing there, and sketched out and inked and then colored with color pencil. Thanks for watching.